So we are excited to have with us Divjot Singh, a talented UI architect from Udon. Please welcome Divjot. A round of applause for him, guys. Divjot has extensive experience in building user-friendly and efficient React and React Native applications that not only looks great but also enhances user experience. So he's here to share his insights. So over to you, Divjot.
Hi all, I'm audible. All audio good? Great, great. Cool. So you all woke up early, right? Then you canceled your Saturday plans, right? Then you focused for 4 hours, right? And then you had lunch. So here we are. A round of applause to all of you for coming and still being attentive. Without you, it would be very awkward if I was alone giving this talk. So thanks a lot. Literally impossible without you. So I'm Divjot. Talk is all about surviving the crunch, right? Very difficult years, right? Last few years, as you have seen, yeah, it's great. This is unprecedented. We have never seen such a problem in industry where it was rampant hiring, then firing, and then layoffs, then cost cuts and whatnot. So, and it's a downer topic, and I don't think I can just make it look good, right? But what do we do, right? Indirectly or directly, I'm sure everyone, all of us, would have been impacted by layoffs, either directly or if your teams are reduced in size, then also there's more work for you, right? Who would do that work? So this is all about how to navigate that, how to make sense of it, how to come up with technology if it can enable you to do more. But yeah, I wanted to take a moment to just acknowledge the fact that yeah, industry is quite weird right now. I'm Divjot. If you have ever used Swiggy, if you have ever used Samsung Internet, if you have ever used housing, or if you have shopped at a local shop, chances are my code was directly impacting your experience. Uh, and I want to first talk about that shit happens, right? I hope we can swear. So this is my agenda, just it's not in a bullet list, it's a satanic circle. We'll go through all of these things one by one. So let's get into it, right? So first of all, I want to talk about when such stuff happens, right? When there's a lot of pressure, be it financial to companies, be it team sizes reducing, be it innovating, pivoting your business because the previous business was not working. Sometimes you have to think of newer platforms. You have to think of changing the strategy. And I hope you can see over here. And sometimes you have to deal with less people but more work. So this is the first stage of the topic that I want to talk about. So in 2019, I was fortunate enough to be invited by Google to talk on their keynote about how at Swiggy we were building good web apps, right? We were using very bespoke styling and designs for desktop and mobile. Our code base was quite good, and we could see how, based on the interaction model, right? If you're on a mobile, you would want to use it in a nice scrolling way, but if you're on desktop, you want to make use of that space, right? The cart over there is just a bottom bar, but over here you can see the entire cart. So this is how we had built Swiggy, and yeah, I'm quite proud of the team at Swiggy and back then also. That was quite cool. But what I did not mention at that time was that time we had 20 UI engineers. We had two separate web code bases, right, for desktop and mobile. It's quite traditional, right? And on top of that, we also had 15 or 20 iOS developers, 15 or 20 Android developers. So as you can see, right, the scale was quite different from the stuff that's going on right now, right? Today, I work at Udan, has been some 4 5 years now. It is similar story that we have a desktop experience, we have a mobile experience. On mobile, we want to optimize for mobile UI. On desktop, we want to make use of the space. But we use React Native over here with React Native Web and code push. So this is one technology that I feel if your team, if you're an engineering manager, if you're pitching something to your team leader, hey, why don't we do this? This technology definitely can help you achieve a lot more efficiently, right? And shift to many more platforms. So as I said, new platforms, right? But you would have many questions like, hey, this is a bit nervous, right? I get nervous thinking about it because traditionally we're used to desktop, mobile, web, Android, right? So how do we navigate all of that? So first is platform specific UI. So if you are a React Native engineer, you probably already know what is going to come, but just for a small hint into it, how it works. So on our app, we have our hooks which we can use to, at any point of the code, know that am I in a desktop environment, or am I in a mobile environment, am I on a web environment, am I on an iOS environment. So that way we can design different layouts for different screens. And on the other hand, there are some functionalities that are only available on native platform, but it's slightly different, right? DOM APIs can be different from what React Native APIs would be like. So over there, we can do something like file system based feature detection or a platform detection. So that way you can manage your code and you don't have to have two, three, four code bases, but rather the same code base. I'm sorry, your same logic can be co-located. Just the differences of the platform could be handled. The navigation. So this is a big problem, right? So on React Native, you would be probably using React navigation, but on web, you would probably using React router, right? Or Next.js. So how do we deal with that? So over here, again, we have hooks. So if you just squint and think what's happening over here is just that, okay, we're detecting I'm on a React Native platform or I'm on a web platform, whatever navigation is supposed to happen, right? On press of this, navigate to this screen, it would be handled based on the specific SDK of React Router or React Navigation. So this way, our screens are portable. They don't need to worry about which environment they're running in. They simply just work, be it on web or on app. Performance. That's another question that would come up. That hey, React Native is cool, but then I saw this blog which says Flutter is much faster. On Native is even faster. How do I convince my team that this is a worthwhile bet? So I will acknowledge that. Yeah, it is difficult, right? React Native is not. It is native definitely, but at the same time you also have to deal with JavaScript, right? So it can have its own challenges. Some of the pain points are things like startup performance. So if you're not using Hermes, you should definitely. But even then, there can be some bottlenecks over there. Animations could be a bit tricky, right? And upgrades definitely on React Native are quite tricky. So I'll just go through some of the things that we had done to improve it. So on the startup performance side, I think that it is possible to improve your performance, right? So over here you can see our efforts to improve our startup performance. This is the time it took for app to load in P99, 99 percentile. So over here you can see that it took 12 seconds in January, and with some optimizations we could come down to 5 seconds. So that's more than 2x improvements. I have written a very long blog. People have complained that it's way too long. I can't even read it. So if you want, you can take the screenshot, or you can connect offline. We can discuss more. So it is possible. I'm not saying that React Native is by default going to be as fast as you want, but it is possible to optimize it. You can find efficiencies, right? You can find something which is not needed during the boot up. It can be called a bit later. Things like that. You can maybe call multiple things in parallel before React Node is even attached. So stuff like this can be done. There is a pain point there, but it is possible. Another thing that comes up is that about upgrades and all, right? So on Android or iOS, you have to support previous platforms, right? iOS is not big of a problem because the adoption rate is quite good, but on Android, you have to support even Android 4 or 5 because maybe that's where a lot of your user base is. So how leveraging React Native and React Native web helped us was that we literally had an entire web app, right, which was based on the same code. So we could just put it in a TWS shell, launch it as a light app. We don't have to do anything else. It just works on Android 4 and above. We don't have to worry about performance because Chromium is going to take care of a lot of the memory management, performance rendering, and you get instant deployments, and no one is left behind. So about Todan, as I said, right, it's about local shop vendors. For them, they may not always be using the latest phone or devices. So that can also be done. And the code is already there. We're just putting it in the shell, right? And you can see it has like 1 lakh downloads with almost minimal effort. So that's another way you can take care of this thing. And what I did not mention this time around was that, okay, but all of this was done by 5 to 6 engineers. So you can see the scale, right? Like how much can be achieved if you have a technology that can be write once and use everywhere kind of thing. So that's about how we have handled code base at Udan. This is one way you can take care of new platforms like Udan Live or Wave. And you can also at the same time do more with decimated teams, right? And you have less people to do work. And you may not even have to do a lot of the things that I just told, right? So Expo has been literally fire, right? They have done so much of innovation on the Metro side of things. Metro is a bundle used by React Native, which then allowed them to add file-based routing. It also helped them to add a lot of routing, right? So you can just keep your route here. Here, this is an example of APIs. So even your web deployment can use this API, which would then be used by both web and Android and iOS. So this is literally the thing that we're trying to chase, but Expo is actually doing it. I think Blue Sky already, there was news, right, that one developer built all those platforms alone using Expo. So yeah, it is good. So look into Expo if your team, if your company is trying to do something which has to be on all platforms, at the same time doesn't want to use the bandwidth of a lot of engineers. So this topic is done. Now we go to the next one. So next one is about bandwidth being constrained and tighter deadlines, right? So how do you do with when you literally have to ship it in few days, or there's an outage, you cannot waste any more time? How to deal with that stuff? So you all know this, right? So React quite commonly says that its UI is a function of props or state or data, whatever it is, right? But I think this data is not really described enough, right? The data could be coming from a database, which then has a service which has an API, which then has a video which converts it, massages it to reduce the payload size, and then it becomes props in your React component, and then it finally becomes a UI. So there's a series of things that happen before UI is built. Traditional client server model. So over here you can see that if you have your UI all on the client side, then any change would mean that you will first change the data, you will change the server, then you change your API endpoints, contracts, and then you change your client, and then the UI would be changed. And if you move towards co-location, where is that some parts of UI, not all, that's why there are two UIs. Some parts of UI could be probably get described on the server side, right? Which I think most of the companies have converged to that. Oh, how can we just quickly deploy something without having to deploy many things, right? So that is co-location. And if you again squint a bit, this would look more like client components and server components, server-driven components, server-side components, React server components. All of those are ultimately trying to achieve the same idea that how can we describe UI on the server side, and on the client, it's instead of writing, instead of updating that code, waiting for adoption and all those things, it could just be available. There are many ways to do this, obviously, and I'm sure all of us have done some way of doing it. So over here, I'm presenting two screens. Should have swapped it anyway. So this screen has a lot of widgets. You can see this is a card screen. This also has a lot of widgets. So all these widgets are actually a series of JSON arrays, right? Arrays sent by the backend, wherein all these descriptions are right on the backend side. So instead of having data dot item dot metadata dot description dot title, it would have title, right? And stuff like this. So this reduces the friction. The contract is no more the API endpoint, but rather the stabilized widgets, the props that you use to that widget, those become the contract, which makes life easy for both sides. Tomorrow, if backend team wants that, oh, we have two of these information bits, right? Delivery by when you can expect the delivery to come, by how much credit you can get. If they want to add another thing over here, instead of having an entire SDLC cycle, it could be just another item in the array sent from the backend, and client will just consume it and render. So this is cool. This I think all of us already have done in some way or another. Just to expand a bit more on this. So over here you can see there are different strings, right? There's even some styling, this slash pricing and whatnot. So we can go a bit ahead and even not only send the title, but even some of the styling. So here you can see it's literally we are sending HTML from backend, but in a DSL, right? Our own DSL around it, so that it works on React Native or even web, right? So this is possible. You can do it, and you can go as crazy as you want. You can put entire React trees into your server side and send it as a JSON, and on the client side, you go through that JSON and re-render the React side of things. Or you can wait. I think React Server components are definitely a thing already on web. And again, Expo team is trying to make it work with native side of things. So we do anticipate that we can wait for it or build our own DSLs and get the best of both worlds. That your components are defined on the server side, and without an update, without OTA, without even a JSPAC update or code push update, your users will get the information right away, instant deployments, right? So this is another way which on a Friday night suddenly you get a request that oh this is failing. It's just removing the array from an API endpoint and that's it. Cool. I also mentioned Storybook. Chaitanya obviously had an awesome talk about it. By the time he said that, okay, this is the end of the talk, we all realized that, but this is something you also do, right? We also have story component, we also have 50 components and all. What is it that you're doing? And then we learned, oh, okay, we were so wrong. And that's something that only right now Blade is doing, right? So yeah, the basic part of it is something I'm sure all of us can achieve or already have achieved. And this again reduces the friction, right? Instead of trying every single error state live on the production code, you have your components with explosion of every single possibility, and that way design team and dev team can collaborate and understand this is all solid. And on the production side, you just know it will work because it's already tested on the storybook side of things. So if you have not yet invested in it, definitely do. I don't think I need to convince any further than Chaitanya's talk. Cool. So this is how I think we can navigate a bit more when it comes to constraint bandwidth. That try putting stuff on the server side, try to see if you can standardize some of these things, right? If those components can be standardized once you're solved. So that's also another thing we have covered. Next is, okay, so now we'll take three together. So one is on-call pressure, there's QA bandwidth is lower, right? And if your business has to pivot to some different direction. So shit happens. And things look good. This is a very great graph, right? It explains almost anything you want to explain when it comes to technology. But when shit does happen, things break, right? Every single endpoint is a point of failure. And imagine if you had a toggle, right? Oh, something went wrong. Let me just flip a switch and all my bugs are gone, right? How do you get this? This is obviously achievable. And how do you get this is by having feature flags, kill switches, staggering your release instead of releasing all or nothing you release for 1% users, 5% users, see how it's performing, do A/B analysis, and something like web fallbacks. So I'm sure you already know about these things, but if your company is not yet invested in having experiment platform or feature flag platform, definitely do because this is a lifesaver when it comes to having to take care of on-call pressures, right? What is this web fallbacks? So this is again a unique thing that you can do with React Native Web, React Native Web and React Native, wherein that suppose there's a navigation going to happen right from this screen to that screen. I have a feature flag which says that oh, there's a bug right now in the native build for these particular users. For those users, open the web view for this cart page, but for the rest of the users, open the normal cart page. And yeah, things would work, right? On the web, you can instantly deploy for those specific users on the native side of they'll get the web view, and other users will just get the cart page. So this is again a very cool technique that can be leveraged only because React Native and React Native Web has this great interpolation, right? And that you can go from this to a web view and all. Of course, it would be a degraded experience where you would have its own overhead to load, but it's much better than a broken cart page, right? So it's more like a fallback, right? Hence the name. So this is again an interesting thing that gets unlocked because we're using something like React Native and React Native Web. About the on-call pressure again, so most of the bugs are things that you might have fixed, but they keep coming back again and again, right? So how do we catch those? So this is a very simple example, but just to give you the idea, how do you handle this? So this is a simple box component, everything looks fine, but some of our engineers who are new or junior engineers, they may not know that, oh, on React Native side, the width and height cannot be a string, it has to be a number, right? But it can be a string when it is a percentage. So this is the official types for React Native. So over here you can see that height is string or number, width is string or number. Why they are such is because they have to support older versions of TypeScript, so they are not using the template strings, but we can do better. So over here you can see that, okay, we know for sure that React Native has some bespoke types, wherein that it can be a number, it could be a string, but it only can be a string if it is a number appended with a percentage, and it can also be an auto, but no other strings can be allowed. So just by having a simple union, adding it to the types, you need not even fix it on the React Native types page. You can just use patch package, I can speak, and that can also help you to just unblock yourselves, get this working. And now when some of the engineers may do it, they'll get a red squiggly line, the builds will fail, we're like, oh, you're using string when it's supposed to be these set of types. So this is just an illustration of that bugs happen and you may fix it, and as an on-call also you may fix it, but have an insight that how can I fix it for good, right? How can I make sure that this does not repeat? So do that by using linters, by using types, use patch package, use write your own bespoke ESLint rules if possible, to detect these bugs early, and if not that, at least also have alerts so that if it comes back again, once you've identified a bug, add an alert for it. The next time it comes, you know when it's even 10 events. So this is one way you can think of how to catch bugs early. Yeah. So about the QA bandwidth also, right? If you have reduced QA, how do you navigate that? So as you can see, right, it's all about efficiency. How do you do things with this? So over here, testing is hard. I would say that it's very easy to write good tests on day one, but by day five, who knows why they're failing, right? It could be Playwright, it could be Chromium, it could be your code, it could be your framework of choice, it could be the emulator, it could be the network, it could be the backend API. It's very hard to control end-to-end tests, right? So when it comes to it, like Kinsey Dodds, he talked about that how for his website, just a simple test like this was great to solve a big outage, right? Similarly, Corey has talked about how he looks at end-to-end testing as phases. So phase one is that you have something what Kent did. Phase two is that, okay, now you know you have some more confidence in E2A testing, so you add some more stable tests. And then phase three is when you do the unhappy flows, right? And here he's again mentioning that how phase one is easy, phase two is also maybe possible, but three is when it requires a lot of team maturity to do it. So I'll talk about our journey. We were using React Native. We were like, okay, Maestro looks cool. YAMLs are easier to write than very complicated code. But we realized that it's slow, it is flaky, and running it on the CI/CD can be quite expensive, right? And tricky. And you may not get all the insights out of it. So we again leverage the fact that we're using web also. So we pivoted to Playwright. Why we can do this is because our code is literally the same between web and React Native. So it runs in 2 minutes. The CI/CD was literally a button because it's already built, and we get nice reports of the insights, console, network tab, everything is there. So howsoever it may work for you, having something that definitely works is much better than having a lot of it, but it doesn't work, and you're now spending time maintaining your tests, right? So that was some insight about how do you take care of these things. So now, lastly, I come to mental health, right? This is quite important, right? It is literally the only thing that allows us to function, right? Without good mental health, you can do nothing. But I'm not going to give you a laundry list of do this, then it will be good, do that, then it will be good. I think you probably already know that what your heart thinks that this, if I do this, it will make me feel better. So be it setting boundaries that, oh, I don't want to be called at 9 p.m. You have a chat with your manager or your team that, oh, I'm only available during these times. I'm happy to help you, but at this time, right? You can set boundaries. You can just go in a park, right? That can also be very good for your mental health. You can call a friend that, hey, yeah, it's so annoying that I'm struggling with this problem. It could be vacation, or it could be even therapy, right? It can definitely help because sometimes you don't know where the issues are coming from, and you may realize that, okay, there's some weird drive in you which is making you push so hard when you need not do it, right? And some people who might know me from 2018 or something, they may remember that I was the one pitching the idea that we don't have to be 100%, right? We can be 80%, 90% because we'll sustain much longer. If you're 100% for 5 months, you may collapse in the 6 months. Why not just take it slow, take it easy? We can do it, right? Just saying this, I can see people are smiling, right? So yeah, you can do it. Just do it, and just do it because you deserve it, right? It's not that, oh, I need to do it so that I can be more productive. That's counterintuitive. The idea is to just enjoy your work as much as you can. At the same time, realize that if you don't give yourself a pause, things can get much more difficult, right? And especially with all the things that we went through, you don't want to be limited. So, yeah, that is all about mental health. That's all about my talk. Thank you so much. I think I'm in time.
Thank you so much, Divjot. I think this is a topic which resonates with most of us. That we all have tight deadlines, schedules, planning meetings, deadlines, quarterly planning, commits. So I think all we need is, by embracing the growth mindset, a great collaboration, and as you mentioned, the sustainability.
Yeah.
Right? That's very important. Cultivating resilience and also celebrating smaller wins. That's where we can, not only survive the crunch but also thrive in it, and also turn the pressure into opportunity. Thank you so much. And before we wrap up, any questions that Vijay can take?
Chaitanya.
Yes, Chaitanya.
Hey, hi Divjot. That was a brilliant talk. Thank you so much for talking about mental health. It's very important that more and more people realize how important mental health is, and it's even so important when you want to sustain the same kind of performance for a long time. But regardless, I had two tech-related doubts. The fallback that you were mentioning, you fall back to the web view. That was very brilliant. I think that's very interesting and something that I would also want to try out. The question there is, when you're falling back, you mentioned that you only fall back when there is a feature flag turned on. Would it be possible to fall back whenever an error is caught in an error boundary on a specific route? Or are you already doing that?
Yeah, so definitely that's a good point. Both points are good. So yeah, mental health. Yeah, and secondly on the fallback. So yeah, it could be any logic, right? This conditional could be from backend, it could be from front end, it could be that, oh, we just errored out. So instead of a refresh button just calling the same API, you can go to the web view side, or you could just intercept that, oh, this is not working. So whichever way it is, the main magic is that this conditional can be anything, right? You have that power for all the users. For a legacy screen that you want to remove from native, you can just fall back to web that, okay, we don't want to maintain on native side. It could be anything. So yeah, right now we experiment with it. See, it's a fallback, right? Realize that on a slow Android phone, 600 Snapdragon, opening up a web view, then opening up the page, then opening up the API, it is not the best experience. So we use it as the last effort when nothing else works. Usually hot fixing is good enough, but when you cannot, yeah, of course, it could be based on errors also. We have not yet needed it so far. Yeah.
Makes sense. Another thing that in this specific use case that is boggling my mind is when you're falling back to a web view, how do you handle auth?
Yeah, so on React Native, I don't know, many apps definitely already try to have login on web on their apps and then open the native, right? So in that, in our case, we use React Native web view, and that the cookie is set during the auth only. So when you have reached this screen, your auth is already handled. It is tricky, right? You have to be mindful of that because without that, it will not work. But that's how it is done, that you preserve that cookie, and when you open that web view, that works.
So your login happens on web view and rest
No. Even if it doesn't, so it could be JWT token, it could be anything, right? So whatever is your way of doing auth, that needs to be complicated. It's a good point that you have said, and in our case, it is handled because by that time it's done.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else has any questions? No? All good? Yeah. Thank you so much, Divjot. It's a very entertaining, very insightful session. Thank you. We just have an announcement. If anybody wants to give a flash talk,